I guess at the end of the day, it's a results-based business, and you came away with a result. But I'm guessing that you're necessarily happy with everything that happened before that.
Well, I think when you interview Pat, I don't know if you already interviewed him, or when you talk to him, I think he'll say the same thing, that he'll probably be a bit disappointed with the execution of some of the things that they did, as we are. But ultimately, I've just said to lads, the one thing you've kind of maybe sometimes got to relax and get your head around is you only have to look at this Premiership, see how competitive it is, and how the teams that can beat each other and how the teams can score against each other, that actually any win in the Premiership at the moment is a good win against anybody. And I think it's probably the thing that our lads have got to just settle down and get their hands around a bit themselves. I think too many of them probably get caught up in the kind of notion that if you're one team and you've had some success doing something over a couple of seasons, that victory should kind of just come, because they don't. Premiership is a really competitive competition. Bristol are playing really well at the moment. They've got a lot of confidence. They're not playing with any real baggage. They came here to try and win, and so you've got to play well to beat them. And for me, I'm pleased we've got a win today. And I think that's what I've just said to them. Every win is a precious thing. You're going to have to work hard for it, and you have to deal with it. And that's all I said to them. I said, just get your heads around the fact that every one of these games is going to be like this. It shouldn't be a shock to you if it's tight after 60 minutes. They should be close, and that's where you've got to use some kind of bravery and some skill and work hard and come through it, which we've done today. And I kind of want to congratulate the players for that. Have we got things to work on? Of course we have. There's too many mistakes out there for me to say there wasn't things to work on, but every team's going to have things to work on. Bristol have things to work on, Saracens will have things to work on from last night. We'd have had things to work on if we'd have won by 30 points. You're always going to have things to work on. The important thing is to move on, whether it's a win or a loss, and deal with things you can. We've got a completely different mental challenge next week in Cast, and I would imagine that will bring out a level of intensity on top of today that we would expect going into one of those games. I just said to lads, you should make sure that you were excited about today's game, and if you weren't, you need to have a little bit of a think about why you weren't excited about today's game, because I know you'll be excited about next week, but today was a big challenge and you should have been very excited about it. That said, a lot of the guys may well have been, and that's how we managed to get the win in the end.
Indeed. I mean, you must be frustrated with some of the mistakes you made. I mean, lots of handling errors, those sorts of things. They're not necessarily atypical of what we have seen from Exeter maybe earlier on this season, certainly in the Premiership.
Yeah, but I think the whole competition has changed since the start of the season. You remember that first block of Premiership games, everybody's fighting for the same thing, which is, what's going to happen in the shake-up of this season, where are things going to go. You get through there, and that starts to determine then how much energy and effort you put into your European campaign. Now, whether that's your Heineken campaign or whether that's your Challenge Cup campaign. Then how your first couple of rounds in that goes start to determine how much you put into your Premiership Cup competition. How that goes then starts to determine how you start to run the next couple of Premiership games and your next European block. And so as the season progresses, everybody changes. And at the moment, we're in a situation where we've done pretty well in that first block of 6 games, which has elevated to a position where I can't blame the lads for looking at some other games. You can't blame them. That's human nature. And so as these challenges shift and change, your ability to have to deal with those different things has to shift and change a little bit. And that's what we've probably not quite done. We've not quite shifted our balance quite to the level we want to. But that still doesn't mean that wasn't a good win. Beating Bristol now takes a bit of doing. I think we should be pretty pleased with that.
Again, does this set you up then well for Cash next week?
100%.
It's a huge game, isn't it?
100%. I mean, what was important? I mean, I'm not being funny. I don't mind looking at our fixtures. We've got some massively challenging fixtures coming up in the Six Nations. The Six Nations is a long period now. We're going to have 8 players away. We've got some hugely challenging fixtures in there. We're going to go away to Worcester, who are going to be fighting for their lives. We're going to be going away to Sale, and you look at how Sale performed last night. We've got an away game against Gloucester on a Friday night on a short turnaround. We've got some hugely challenging fixtures through the Six Nations. This was a massively important game for us. We've locked it down. We've taken the 4 points. We've created a little bit more. I think Gloucester lost today, didn't they? So we've created a little bit more space to third place. Those are the kind of things that are really important for us at this stage of the season. It lets us have a full focus now on 2 European Cup games, and it lets us kind of pool our resources for how we want to approach those games when we get into Six Nations.
Have you any idea what was happening in the scrums?
I think it's like anything that happens from game to game to game in the Premiership. I think the scrum today was probably as much a reaction of last week's game against Northampton as anything else. So last week, there were so many penalties at the scrum, and probably the refereeing decisions to alter the course of how the scrums went happened quite late. When I'm talking about yellow cards, etc. But I think probably Craig, he actually made both teams play away from scrums very early today. He didn't. You could almost tell he didn't want the scrum to become the dominant battle within the game. But I think that will happen. I think that's something as a team you've got to be able to adapt to. You know, if a referee starts to want to play away, well, you've got to play away and be effective how you play it away. If a referee's going to happy to stand there and let two scrums go at it for a while, you have to adapt to that as well. I don't have a particular issue with that. That's how we've got to be able to get better.
The mere fact there were so many scrums first half just stops the flow of the game, though, doesn't it?
There's only scrums because people make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, that's nobody's fault but the two teams. You know, if the two teams make mistakes, the game starts to get bogged down into scrums. You know, I think that's probably what, like myself, and probably Pat would be the more frustrated with, is there were just numerous handling errors in the game, which did stop a real flow of attacking game and tempo and place into the game, which probably didn't suit either side.
What's the injuries looking like? Cuthbert, Woodburn, and those guys imminent?
They're all fairly close. Jack Noel played today in the A-League, so it'll be interesting how he's got on. Woody's not very far away. Alex Cuthbert's progressing well from he had a pretty bad ding on his shoulder. There's a bit of damage in there, but he's working extremely hard. He's not far away. So we're kind of getting there. We're kind of getting there on broadening things out, which is always going to be important this time of year. Like I say, especially as we start to have guys looking to go going away in the internationals. The stronger base of squad we can have behind them, the better we'll be.
Did you just rest Don Armin today?
Yeah, sorry, yes, just rested Don. I mean, he's the guy who's really chucked the minutes in there for us. You guys will be aware we've had a lot of back five injuries up until this part of the season, particularly across the back row, and it just felt like it was wrong to just try to push him out there again, albeit it would have been great to have played him. We're hoping we'll reap the benefits of that next week.
How long will Dave Ewers be?
I'm not 100% sure. Initially, the injury didn't appear very serious, like with scans or any consultations we've had, but it is taking him a while to shake off.
Samson's injected a little bit sort of vim and vigour at the end of the game. I mean, how have you sort of managed him through the season? Obviously, he had a kind of breakthrough year last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam probably he struggled at the start of the season, probably as much through circumstance as anything else. Joseph, yeah. Sorry, Joe. He struggled more through circumstance than anything. Good job. I knew what you meant. Yeah. Because he kind of was getting ready. We played 2 pre-season games in one weekend. He was getting ready to play in the game here against, I think it was Cardiff. Stino pulled out of the game down on the Friday night down at Pirates. His wife was ill, so they switched positions, and actually the performance down at Pirates was pretty disappointing. The performance here against Cardiff was very good, and actually that established a little bit of a pecking order based just on form of how they were playing that Stino's maintained through the season. I think at that stage of the game we just needed to change something. That's what it felt like to me, and I think changing the half-backs it just added a little bit of zip and tempo into the game that just created a little bit more chance for Bristol and helped to see the game off. That was it.
And a first try for Sean Lonsdale. How do you feel he's done coming into the side?
Well, he's done exceptionally well, hasn't he? You know, every time you bring an academy guy through and he starts to feature in European Cup games or Premiership games, it kind of indicates that these lads are being well coached. They're important parts of the first team squad, and they help us look after guys like Don Armour at the same time. Sean's playing well, gaining experience. This will all be great for his future in rugby going forward.
You'd no temptation to kick the penalty when you were 2 points behind.
Would that be what extra Chiefs do? There you go.